I was using my Quest to play Beat Saber. I was in my garage, which I usually leave open. My neighborhood is pretty safe, so I don't really worry about anyone coming in uninvited. However, we do have those solar guys that are always coming around trying to sell us solar panels. I had been playing the Linkin Park DLC, trying to master the song Lost on Expert before moving on to Expert Plus. I had the headphones plugged into the Quest so I could hear the songs at maximum volume, so it's almost impossible to hear anything besides what you're experiencing on the Quest. It is really the best way to escape from reality. I think you're so immersed in what you're doing that when you're interrupted, the feeling is shocking and intense, more than normal. I use my Quest in the evening time, after I'm done with my homework. The trackers work better when the sun's dim, which is coming through the garage door. I tried it once during the day in my backyard, and it just didn't work. That's why the garage became my premier place to play. So I was playing the song Lost again, and I was hitting every note so well. I was having the best run I ever had. I was in the middle of a complicated part when I thought I heard a voice. It must have been pretty loud if I heard it through my earphones. When I heard the voice, my perfect run was finished, and I missed a bunch of blocks in a row. The fuzzy gray background that alerts you when something is in your play space initiated, and there was someone standing in front of me. I thought it was my dad, so I flipped up the headset. Right in front of me, like a foot away from my face, was a creepy looking guy that was wearing a cheap polyester suit. This guy looked like it was his first time ever wearing a suit. "What are you doing in my garage?" I said. He acted like going into my garage was no big deal. He said, "Oh, I'm sorry, but I was wondering if you had a minute to talk. The door was open, and I saw you from the sidewalk." I told him that just because the garage door was opened, that was not an invitation to come in. He apologized, and then started looking me up and down, more specifically, my chest. He asked if I was interested in receiving big discounts on solar panels for my house. I told him I didn't own the house, and my parents would be home any minute. He handed me a cheaply made card with no picture on it and left. He looked back at me when he exited the garage and said, "I hope I will see you again soon." Thank God that creep was finally gone. After he had left, I was too scared to use the Quest and just went inside to watch Netflix, but I first made sure the garage door was locked. When my dad got home, I told him about the guy, and he said he would check the cameras. But for now, not to use the Quest if the garage door was opened. He warned me that with the device on my face, I would have no idea that someone was there. A week went by, and it was evening time. I decided I would finally play the Quest. This time, I would make sure all the doors were locked. I had been playing for a few hours when I heard a crashing sound in my living room. I immediately took the headset off and ran to the living room to see what was going on. Through the window, I saw that man again, coming through the window. He threw one of the porch chairs through the window and was now crawling in. All the doors and deadbolts were locked, so I was forced to run upstairs because I didn't have time to unlock the deadbolt. But I did have my phone. I locked my door and called my dad, and he said he would be home in like 5 minutes. The guy got to my bedroom door and started taunting me. "Hey, I know you're in there. Let me in now, or I will make you regret it." He started to beat on the door, trying to beat it off the hinges. I heard a car door slam in the driveway, and heavy footing coming up the stairs. There was a struggle, and someone fell down the stairs. I heard a knock and a calm voice. "Hey, it's your dad. You can come out now." My dad had caught the guy and fought with him, eventually throwing him down the stairs. The guy was injured and laying at the bottom of the stairs. The police came and took him away. The police told us that the guy was a drug addict that murdered a solar panel salesman and stole his suit and business cards. He was looking for a soft target so he could rob a house and get the money to feed his habit. I guess we were the lucky ones. After the incident, I stopped using the Quest. I like to know what is going on around me. It is much safer that way. I was staying at a casino hotel for a business trip and was bored, but I did bring my MetaQuest. No one else I knew was at the hotel, so it was just me. On the way, I had picked up some vodka and was drinking screwdrivers in the room. I was feeling a little tipsy and wanted to be social, so I went to the pool. There was no one around except for the people that worked there. So I swam a little bit and got in the hot tub. I started to pack it up when the workers were folding all the umbrellas and stacking all the chairs. I felt like I was inconveniencing them in some way, so I dried off and went to look around the casino. I did not see any of my work people there, but I did see some serious gamblers, but especially the ones with the oxygen tanks. Yeah, those are the serious gamblers when they're dragging around an oxygen tank and smoking cigarettes at a slot machine. So I decided that there was nothing to do and went up to my room to have more screwdrivers. I decided to play my quest. I played a little Beat Saber, a little Synth Riders, and it was okay. I played a few rounds of a rock climbing game and decided I wanted to do something a little more relaxing. I decided to try VR chat to see what it was all about. I went to the worlds in the app and I found a bar to go to. I had never done this, so I didn't know anything. I heard that people go to these social bars and have fake drinks there, but have real drinks in real life. So I was pounding these screwdrivers pretty heavily. It seemed like everyone was drinking a lot, more than if you went to a traditional bar, since people have to get home. I met a girl that was really nice and friendly. She helped me by sharing her avatars and telling me how to perform interactions. That was great. I left the bar and was feeling like dancing. I found some EDM clubs. To my surprise, there was no one in the worlds. Disappointed, I finally found a world that was like a 2-story dance club that was full. It was 18 plus, so I knew I was in the right place. I walked around and heard music that was really loud when I was by a wall, so I stood there and started dancing. I made a few friends and had fun. I must have been there for an hour and had a few drinks. I did tell these new friends that I made that I was at a casino, and I might have slipped on the room number. They were from all over, and I wasn't really worried about it. The chances of them being at this hotel were slim to none. I was sitting on a couch, taking a break from all the dancing, when an avatar approached me suddenly. They presented as an avatar of an innocent fairy. The voice I heard was the deep voice of a man. "Hey, I saw you dancing, and I thought you would have a good time at this other dance club." "Oh, hey," I said. "Yeah, what world are you talking about?" I explained that I had been to a few EDM worlds, and they were all empty. He said, "That's okay. We should go to a place called Logos." I thought about that for a minute, and that made my blood run cold. Logos was a club at the casino that I was staying at. I saw the sign when I was walking through the main area. Did he mean the Logos at my casino? I tried to not act surprised and said, "What is that?" At this point, I was pretty drunk and trying to keep my composure. He said, "It's in your hotel, and I'm coming to pick you up. Room 405, right?" How did you know that?" "I overheard you talking. I happen to be staying at the same hotel. Lucky us, right?" I immediately took the headset off and threw it on the bed. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. I was so scared I couldn't even move. Was this really happening? I slowly walked to the door to look through the peephole. As I was walking towards the door, there was another round of loud knocks. I finally got the courage to look in the peephole and saw my friend from work. I opened the door and gave him a big hug. "Hey, what is this?" I told him what happened, and he laughed at me. "Man, you're drunk and stupid. The chances of you both being on VR chat in the same country, state, city, and at the same hotel, it's impossible." In my peripheral vision, I saw the hugest guy I had ever seen come running around the corner right towards us. It was 2021, and I was able to get a new Oculus Quest 2 from Amazon. At the time, it was the Oculus and not the Meta. I thought it was so amazing. Because we were in the pandemic, I was feeling pretty bored. At that time, I was at this job where I still had to go to work in the military, and I caught COVID at work. I was bummed, but excited at the same time. It was back when we were getting 2 weeks off to stay home. Resident Evil 4 just came out in November, and I was going to have plenty of time to play it now that I couldn't go to work. Score. Unfortunately, I did lose my taste and smell. So I got home from work to start my 2-week vacation, and I made sure that Resident Evil 4 was downloaded, but it needed an update. So I started the update and grabbed a whiskey bottle that a friend had left over at my house. I hate whiskey and could never drink it, but if my taste and smell are gone, I could drink it and not taste it at all. I poured a shot in a shot glass and took a sip. I really couldn't taste it or smell it. This was for real. For testing purposes, I might have had too many after discovering my new superpower, and I was starting to feel it. The taste and smell were definitely gone, but I was still feeling drunk. I turned the oven on to make some dino biscuits. When I was putting it in, I spilled the tray with dino biscuits into the oven, and I made a little bit of a mess. I picked it all up, I thought at least, and closed the oven. Yeah, I know. I'm a grown man, and I'm still making dino biscuits. Whatever. It's what my mom used to make me, and I'm only 20, so shut up. I put the dino biscuits in, and wanted to check my update progress. The update was complete, and I thought I would try it out real quick. I started playing, and was instantly immersed in a totally new way to play this game. My dad had a Wii that was backwards compatible, and I played Resident Evil 4 for the GameCube on the Wii. It was really fun, but this was the same game in VR. I must have been pretty distracted by the game, because I was completely caught off guard when somebody grabbed me and started pulling me somewhere. They grabbed the headset off my face, and it was a guy in a full gas mask staring right at me. It took me a minute to realize what was going on, but he was a firefighter. While he was walking me out the front door, I saw the damage from them axing the door open. There was smoke everywhere. I looked back at the kitchen and saw the kitchen with flames engulfing everything. When I was in the safe location, they asked me what happened. I told them that I had COVID. I was making dino biscuits. I got distracted from playing Resident Evil 4 VR on the Quest. They all laughed at me. I asked why. They asked me if I lost my taste and smell, which I replied, yes. They told me that I probably couldn't smell the fire that was smoking out the kitchen from burning the dino biscuits. If I would have had my smell, I could have known and stopped the fire from spreading. Unfortunately, my apartment was burned up and I lost everything. It made me realize that senses are important. If you lose one or two senses, your other senses have to compensate to keep you safe. When I used the Quest, I impaired my sight and hearing and put myself in danger. When I did get settled into another apartment, I finished beating Resident Evil 4, but I just ordered a pizza. I didn't give up on the Quest, but I did give up on those tasty dino biscuits. Sorry, Mom. A group of college kids just couldn't grow up, especially on Halloween night. They would revert back to their young selves and play silly games. They all got some drinks and went to the local cemetery. They were going to play Ghost in the Graveyard. The rules are simple. Have everyone except for the ghost stand at the home base while the ghost runs off and hides somewhere in the graveyard. Now, the home base players try to find the ghost. Meanwhile, the ghost attempts to jump out and tag players. If someone sees the ghost, they yell, "Ghost in the graveyard," and run back to home base. This game was going to be an exciting callback to their fun from their past, and would be a great relief to them now that they were expected to do so much adulting. There was something interesting about the graveyard on this particular night. It felt darker than usual. The moon was bigger tonight, but for some reason, it wasn't brighter. There was a dense fog around the graveyard that was cold when you passed through it. It was a perfect example of what a haunted graveyard should look like. It was perfect for tonight. They picked Robert to be the first ghost. He was fast and would get the game started right. They all went to home base, the grave of a man named Chester Brown. The group was stepping all over his grave, not paying attention to the morality of stepping on a human's grave, but were more concerned with the game above all else. Robert disappeared into the fog, mocking them that he would find them and scare them all. A few minutes went by, giving Robert the time he needed to hide somewhere. When enough time had passed by, everyone was unleashed into the graveyard. There was a lot of space and great places to hide, so Robert could be anywhere. Sam was all alone and wandering the graveyard, looking everywhere for Robert. He heard something and was convinced he had found Robert. He slowly crept over to the noise and prepared to jump past the tombstone to surprise Robert. He jumped forward and yelled, "Ghost in the graveyard." It was Robert, but there was something wrong. Robert was a deformed and terrifying version of himself. His skin was melted, his eyes were blood red and sticking out of his face, and his clothes were ripped. Sam's smile dropped, and he took off to home base. He ran as fast as possible, completely terrified. He heard something chasing him, and it was right behind him. He got to home base, turned around, and Robert was not there. What the hell was that? Did Robert put on makeup, or was it something else? How did he look so convincingly like a terrifying monster? Suddenly, Sam heard multiple footsteps from different directions. From all directions, he saw Kanisha running towards him, then Becky, then Mandeep, and Mike. Everyone was back at home plate, and all had the same terrifying story about Robert's appearance. With either a shared delusion or something really wrong, they were done with this game and just wanted to go home. Suddenly, Robert came out of the fog. He looked completely normal. Robert said, "I got all of you." He looked at the concern from everybody's face and asked, "What's wrong?" They all told him that they saw him out there, and he looked like a monster. He laughed it off and said, "Look at me. It's just me. Your mind is playing tricks on you." After that, even though Robert tried to reassure the crowd, no one wanted to play anymore. They all walked back to their cars and called it a night. No one could explain how they had a shared mass hysteria. They did. As they were walking towards their cars, Sam looked back at the graveyard. In the distance, he could see a figure watching the group leave, then turning around to head deeper into the graveyard. I was on my way home from a late shift at my restaurant job. I had been driving for a while, and I was starting to get tired, so I decided to stop at a gas station I saw to fill up my tank and get a coffee. As I pulled into the station, I noticed that it looked a little run down and abandoned. There were 2 cars parked there, so someone was there at least. The overhead lights were dim, and some were burned out, and there didn't seem to be anyone around. There was a neon sign in the window that said open. Still, I was desperate for a caffeine fix, so I got out of my car and made my way towards the door. As I entered the station, I was immediately struck by how cold and damp it felt inside. The air was heavy and stagnant, and there was a strange smell that I couldn't quite place. I tried to ignore it and headed straight for the coffee machine, but as I reached for a cup, I heard a faint whisper coming from the corner of the room. I froze, listening intently. The whisper was barely audible, but I could make out a few words here and there. "Help me," it seemed to say. "I'm trapped here." I turned to see who was speaking, but no one was there. I looked around the room, but it was empty except for me and the cashier. I couldn't explain it, but I felt a sense of dread wash over me. I asked the cashier if he heard a noise. He said, no, but he looked at me with a questionable demeanor. I was starting to think that someone was actually trapped, and the cashier knew something. I didn't want to say any more, but I wanted to get some distance and call the police to check it out. I quickly grabbed my coffee and headed back to my car, trying to shake off the feeling of disgust. If he really had kidnapped someone, he was a terrible human being. As I drove off, I called the police and told them what I had experienced. A squad investigated the gas station and called me back a few hours later. They put a woman on the phone named Ruthie. She thanked me for calling the cops. Ruthie had pulled into the same gas station about 15 minutes prior to me. She had been ambushed by the cashier and was tied up and hidden in the back of the store. It was just blind luck that I was able to hear her and get out of there and call the police. If you hear a cry for help in the distance, make sure you answer the call. I was scrolling through OfferUp on my phone, looking for a good deal on a new piece of furniture. I had been using the app for months and had found some great finds, but something felt different about tonight. There were multiple listings that seemed like it was from the same seller, and the pictures from that seller looked all blurry and distorted, making it impossible to tell what I was really looking at. As I continued to scroll, I stumbled upon a listing for a vintage chair. The picture was blurry, but I could make out the shape of it. It looked like it would be perfect for my living room. I messaged the seller and immediately received a response. It was strange. The response was almost instantaneous, as if the seller was waiting for my message. They offered to meet me at a location that was only a few blocks away from my apartment. I quickly agreed, excited about my potential new purchase. But as I got closer to the meeting spot, my nerves began to kick in. I was on a desolate street, with no other cars or people around. I pulled over and messaged the seller to ask if we could meet at a different location, but they didn't respond. Suddenly, I heard a tap on my window. I jumped, startled, and saw a man standing outside of my car. He motioned for me to roll down my window, and against my better judgment, I did. He didn't introduce himself or say anything. He just held out a key and pointed towards the nearby alley. I hesitated for a moment, but curiosity got the best of me. Reluctantly, I followed the man's instructions and found the chair he was selling. It was even more beautiful in person, and I was thrilled with my purchase. But as I turned to leave, I realized that I was lost in a maze of alleys. I pulled out my phone to use my GPS, but it wouldn't connect. I felt a knot from my stomach as I realized how much danger I could possibly be in. I heard footsteps behind me and turned to face the man that I had met earlier, but this time he was different. His face was twisted with a sinister smile, and he was holding a knife. He lunged at me, and I barely managed to dodge and get out of the way. I ran as fast as I could, but I could hear him gaining on me. I turned a corner and saw a door. I quickly pushed it open and found myself in a dimly lit room. There were dozens of people in this room, all sitting at old, dusty computers. They were all using OfferUp. I realized I had stumbled upon a group of people who were using the app to lure unsuspecting victims into their trap. I tried to run, but one of the men grabbed me and dragged me towards a computer. Against my will, they forced me to log on to my OfferUp account and began messaging people on my behalf, luring them to the same location. I was trapped, and there was no way out. The men laughed as they watched their plan unfold, enjoying the thrill of the hunt. I begged for mercy. They only taunted me, telling me I should have been more careful. I felt like I was in there for weeks. I don't know how long I was trapped in that room, But eventually, the police came to my rescue. They had been tracking the group for months and had finally caught them. I was the only survivor out of multiple people that had contacted my offer-up to make a deal with who they thought was me. I was the only survivor. None of them were alive to tell the tale. After that horrible situation, I never used OfferUp again. Every time I even heard a mention about OfferUp, I would feel a shiver run down my spine. I had learned the hard way that not everything that seems like a good deal is worth the risk. Everyone loves getting scared at haunted houses, and a group of guys plus one girl, Matt, Will, Keith, and Bethany, were no exception. They were looking for the scariest haunted house they could find and planned on going for Halloween. They have been to all kinds of haunted houses in the country, big and small, looking for the perfect one. But they were never satisfied because they thought all these haunted houses weren't very scary. They knew it was fake, and the rush they got when they were kids would just never be fulfilled. As they exited their sixth haunted house of October, a stranger approached them. He asked, "How was it?" They looked at him with disappointed faces and said, "It's fine, but it's the same old thing." He looked excited to hear that because he was about to pitch them an exciting new opportunity. "How would you like to go to a real scary haunted house for Halloween?" They all looked intrigued. The haunted house he referred to was not open to the public and was only by special invitation. The man said, "I know you've been looking for something more exciting than this. Are you interested?" They all said yes and exchanged information. They left each other and would soon see each other with the promise of a real haunted house. Halloween was coming up, and they all received their official invitation. There was a cryptic message that accompanied the ticket, but they all assumed it was part of the game. They got in the car and put the provided coordinates into the GPS. It pointed to an old, condemned neighborhood. They were all excited to go on this new adventure. They arrived, and there were guards at the front entrance. After talking to the guards, they were confirmed to be guests and proceeded to park the car and head inside. There were a few other groups of people entering the main building at the same time. With everyone gathered, there was a major announcement from a man named Victor Brand. "Hello, everyone," Victor said. "Welcome to the scariest haunted house you will ever find." As he was talking, there were footsteps and knocking sounds in the background. Everyone was looking around at the various noises, but Victor seemed to be oblivious to all the noises in the background. "You are all here because you have been seeking out a haunted house. Well, this house is haunted, or something is really wrong with it. Here's the proposal. If you can last an hour in this house without exiting, you will win $100,000 each." Excited, everyone looked at each other and were happy with the additional benefit, but really they were just there for the scares. They all agreed, and Victor and his friends quickly exited. Their last words, "Good luck." The group of 15 people looked at each other and laughed at the situation. What a joke. As they were laughing, something fell in the other room. They all heard it and moved towards the noise. In the kitchen, there was a book that fell on the floor. Suddenly, all the cabinets opened, and knives and plates flew out of the drawers. Multiple knives hit different people. This was starting to get real. Shocked to see that this wasn't a joke, 3 contestants sprinted for the door, namely the ones with knives protruding from their skin. The chairs at the table flew in all directions, hitting another person. The chandelier fell to the ground as well, and shattered into pieces. Matt looked at Bethany. "Do you want to get out of here?" Bethany said, "No. Let's just make sure we're not going to get hurt by something." The group got out of the kitchen and were now in the living room. Objects in the living room were falling at them as well. pictures flying off the walls, lamps smashing into walls. When the couches came after them, they all quickly ran upstairs. They found a bedroom with not much in it. They grabbed all the loose items they could find and threw it out in the hallway. They closed the door and huddled up in a circle. As a group, they had determined that this is where they were going to stay for the next 50 minutes. Unfortunately, their plan was ruined by this crazy house. 20 minutes had passed by, and they heard items slamming into walls and ceilings, glass breaking, and people screaming. They were terrified to leave this room at this point, but felt somewhat comfortable. They were all looking at each other and just wanted this to be over. Out of nowhere, Will started shaking violently and foaming at the mouth. They all jumped up, and Will fell over. He was dead. Bethany cried as she ran to the door. However, she stopped in her tracks. They all saw a puddle on the ground that came under the door. When they opened the door, water started slowly coming in, which was from an overflowing sink. The water must have got to Will, and the water must be electrified. With this new threat, Matt broke the window and they all went to the roof. They walked across the roof a little bit. While looking for safe passage, Matt found another window and broke it. They were looking for an alternate way down the stairs to avoid the electrified puddle. They entered the next room and went to the door to open it. The curtains they passed by caught fire quickly, and suddenly the room was ablaze. They all exited the room and were now in the hallway. Enough was enough, they thought. Keith, let's get the hell out of here. They went down the hallway as fast as possible, avoiding furniture and books slamming into the wall everywhere. Another room was on fire now. The bathroom sinks exploded, and water was shooting all over the place. The windows all exploded as they were running towards the door, glass flying everywhere. There was a roaring sound, like the sound of a freight train, or a tornado. This was pure madness. They all finally got to the front door and ran through it. They made it about 10 steps out the door, and all the chaotic noises suddenly stopped. In front of them was Victor, with 2 of his guys. Victor said, "You all didn't make it. You had 20 minutes left. No money for you, alright?" But he just didn't understand. We didn't care about the money anymore. Bethany screamed at Victor, "You heartless bastard. We just lost our friend Will in that house." Victor said, "Who is Will? When you came, it was just you 3. They were all confused. Was Victor crazy or lying? Bethany said, "Will came with us, and you shook his hand. Don't tell me you don't remember him." Victor said, "Honestly, I don't know what you're talking about. You have to understand that this house is actually haunted, and you acknowledged when you signed a waiver of liability. The house makes you see things that aren't there." When he said that, they all looked back at the house. There was no fire, flood, or broken glass. The house was in perfect condition. Bethany looked back and asked Victor, "Where are all the other people that played the game?" Victor, looking irritated, said, "There are no other people. We brought you 3 here to do the challenge, and that's it. Now if you're ready, you can get out of here." They all got in the car and started driving away from the house, happy that they still had their lives. As they were leaving the area, Bethany looked back. She saw Will, with hundreds of people behind him, staring at them driving away, with their white, ghostly glow contrasting with the dark very well. Haunted houses can be fun, but don't look for something too scary. It might be the scariest thing you ever did. There was loud thunder and streaks of lightning outside. It was predicted to be a major storm, and it was best not to go out in this mess. The rain was coming down pretty hard, and I enjoyed the rhythmic sounds of nature providing life to the world, washing away the dirty grime of the city. It was a great night to get under the covers and scroll through my Instagram feed. I had been scrolling through my Instagram for a while when I noticed that I saw something move from my peripheral vision. I suddenly got the feeling that someone was watching me. Seeing something move in the dark from my side began to be more frequent. Every time I looked up from my phone, I could see shadows moving. However, every time I looked up from my phone, I didn't see anything. I tried to ignore it, but it was getting harder and harder to do. I turned the lights on and looked around the room. I did not see anything on the sides or underneath my bed. I turned the lights back off and tried to get back into cuddle mode again. I was scrolling through my Instagram feed, trying to distract myself, when I saw a post from a user I didn't recognize. The image was a black and white photograph of a man standing in the woods. His face was obscured by the darkness, but I could see the outlines of his body and trees behind it. I felt a chill run down my spine as I looked closer. The man seemed to be staring at me directly, and there was something unsettling about the way he looked. The black and white post suddenly came to life and had motion. It was like the art picture motion that has become popular on different apps. The background was moving, and the hooded man began to walk forward towards me. I was intrigued, but also concerned. The man started to get really close to my screen, filling up the picture almost completely. I quickly closed the app and turned off my phone, trying to shake off the creepy feeling of dread that had settled over me. I knew after that I wouldn't be able to sleep that night. Suddenly, I heard a whooshing sound outside. I peeked through the blinds to see what was making that noise. There was a man with a hood, looking right at me. He was starting to slowly walk towards my house. A group of friends gathered around a table on Halloween night. The objective was to test if this magic cup was really real. Someone had found videos on TikTok of a group of teenagers that found a cup with mysterious powers. When they drank from the cup, according to the onlookers in the crowd, they would convulse, their eyes would turn black, and they would say and do really crazy things. Nothing too crazy, just things like cry and tell funny stories about themselves, say crazy stuff, things like that. It was like a paranormal way to pull something out of you, and it was just so entertaining. So Brian tracked down the group that had the cup and got it. He saved it especially for this night, Halloween night. Everyone gathered around as Brian slowly pulled the cup from the box. It was a plain cup with ancient carvings on it, with some more recent Sharpie writings on top of the ancient carvings. The modern writing said, "Do not drink from this, the devil's chalice," and "cursed." The teenagers read all of this and laughed. "So dramatic," one of them said. Brian asked the crowd, "Who wants to go first?" Kaylee said, "I'll go." Everyone looked at her with shock and laughter. She was the smallest person in the room, at 5'2" and 100 pounds, but she was the first to volunteer for this unexpected challenge. Kaylee asked what she had to do. Brian laid out the rules. He explained, "First, you have to put alcohol in the cup. It doesn't matter what kind. Second, you need to prick your finger and add a drop of your own blood." She looked questionably at Brian, like, what did she just sign up for? He reassured her and said, "Just a small amount will do." Then he told her the most important thing. Third, you must say these words correctly, or something can happen that is not good. The words were Klaatu, Vrata, Niktu. He told her to practice, but she was insulted by the request. She could say 3 words, and correctly. He needed to lighten up and stop micromanaging her. This was supposed to be fun. As Kaylee started the ritual, everyone pulled out their phones to record the whole thing. She put vodka in a cup and swished it around, giving the cup a little sniff, as if to ensure the vodka was really in the cup. Vodka has a terrible alcohol smell, but there's something about it that is alluring. Next, Brian gave her a pin to prick her finger. She did, and placed a drop of her blood in the vodka-filled cup. Next was the words. She looked at Brian and said, Klaatu, Vrata, Biktu. Extremely concerned, Brian ran straight to her and tried to stop her from taking the drink. She messed up the words, and that is not good. He was too late, though. Kaylee quickly slammed the drink and wiped her mouth. She looked up, though, and saw fire and flames everywhere. It was a terrifying display of a hellscape. She was no longer in the house, but in hell. There were creatures down here, too. Then she saw something that really concerned her. She saw a demonic presence approach her, howling in her face. She panicked and picked up a sharp stick and stabbed the demon through the head. It fell to the ground. Then, multiple demons approached her from the left, howling with an unbearable sound. She used her stick to dispatch all the demons that were coming to attack her. With all the demons dead, she wandered around the hellscape to find a way out. Why did she agree to this? This was crazy. Suddenly, 2 more demons approached her, but they were keeping their distance. These demons were different from the rest for some reason in the way they were behaving. They were howling, but they were holding guns and were pointing them right at her. Feeling like her life was in danger, she charged at them with her stick, but she didn't make it. She was gunned down by those demons and was dead. What really happened was different than what was perceived. Kaylee was shot by police responding to a domestic disturbance. Back at the house where the ritual was performed, everyone except one person was dead. They all had suffered from knife wounds. After drinking from the cup, Kaylee had lost her mind and went on a murderous rampage. First, she killed Brian when he tried to stop her. Then everyone else got off the couch and tried to stop her. She took them all out. They thought that Kaylee was small and they could all stop her together, but they were wrong. In the chaos, one girl was able to sneak away and call the police. She survived, but the damage was already done. The cup had the ability to make people do funny and outlandish things, but the ritual had to be done right. If not, there were major consequences. They knew of the dangers and did it anyways. Ancient artifacts are nothing to mess with. Through its long life, an object could have something attached to it that you don't want to let out. It was 2006. I was out in Roppongi, Japan, with some friends. For those of you that don't know, Roppongi is a mecca of partying in Tokyo, where the bars and clubs stay open for 24 hours. So it was me and 2 of my best friends going out this particular night. This was our crew, and we always went out to Roppongi every weekend. We were young, and it was fun. There, we would meet girls from all over the world. Japanese, Korean, Russian, Colombian, you name it, they were there. And they really liked Americans because we were considered exotic. My friends and I would catch a train for an hour to get there. The only bad thing is the train shut down at 12:30, so if we missed that, we would be stuck there and have to drink and dance the night away. Oh, bummer, right? Our plan was never really to catch the train back, though. What would be the point of that? We usually went to a place called Gas Panic, and eventually would go to these after-hours clubs at 5 o'clock if we didn't want to go home yet. There were definitely some weird people in there, but I guess we were weird too since we were still drinking when the sun was up. We met some girls at Gas Panic, and we were all dancing on the stage, getting the crowd hyped up. It was like a concert, and it was so much fun. We were all having a good time, and these girls were gorgeous. The next step would be to get out of here with them. It was all set up, and all we had to do was wait for the girls to be ready to leave. After a while, we were all still dancing and having a great time when I noticed the girls were not there anymore. I told the guys, and we were all just so defeated. Spent a lot of time with them, and we thought we had it in the bag. Now we were back to square one. We all decided to leave and get some pizza at this great New York pizza place and discuss our options. We were all pretty drunk and blue-balled, so we decided to go to this place called Bar Maxim. We got there, and it was not very busy, but there were a few hotties. They were definitely less good-looking, but they were still good-looking. They approached us immediately when we walked in by dancing all sexy towards us. I guess we would be okay here. I heard a thick Russian accent when my girl, the tall blonde with blue eyes, was whispering in my ear asking me what my name was. The other guys were sitting in a VIP booth, and Anya and I joined them. We were all drinking and talking when they put something in our mouths in a sexy way and told us they were going to give us the greatest time of our lives. Well, in Rome, right? All three of us were sitting in VIP, with the girls in front of us dancing seductively, obviously for us to get us excited for what we were about to do at their hotel room. I was really starting to feel good from whatever they gave us. I could feel the bass from the speakers going through my body in waves over and over again. I must admit, it felt pretty good. I was leaning back hard and looking around the now crowded Club Maxim. I looked at Anya's beautiful face when I noticed a distortion in my reality. Anya's face changed back and forth from a beautiful face to a demonic face. It was like she was actually a demon wearing a beautiful girl's skin. I saw the same thing on everybody else's face. To me, it looked like there were 200 demons, all dancing and looking directly at me. I asked my friends if they saw what I saw. They were both staring at the ceiling in ignorant bliss. So when they looked at the dance floor, they saw 200 demons staring directly at them as well. We all jumped up and had the biggest surprised eyes of our lives. Our hearts were pounding, and we were breaking into a sweat. I told everyone to stay calm and follow me. We made our way to the front door of the club, telling our once beautiful Russian ladies that we had to make a call outside. We got to the door and opened it to a blazing bright sun. It was such a shock to see the bright light that one of my friends threw up instantly. We all huddled together and struggled to get to the closest train station we could find. Everyone we passed by had a rotating human and demon face. There can't be this many demons. This is crazy. We finally made it to the train, and the doors closed. We woke up at 2:30 in the afternoon, extremely hungover and reeking of booze. We looked at the train location and realized we were still in Roppongi. Since we had fallen asleep, we missed our stop and rode the train back and forth over and over. The good news is we didn't see the demon faces anymore though. So we rode the train back home and licked our wounds from that crazy night. Whatever those girls gave us was some crazy psychedelic, and we were not ready for that. I guess it was supposed to make us feel more pleasure, but it was a bad batch, and we saw a bunch of demonic faces instead. It was a good thing we didn't have a heart attack or something. The moral of the story is, if you strike out, don't double down. If you double down, don't take candy from strangers. You might end up in a worse position. We had a massive group with us, and we were headed to a Tiesto concert in Shinkiba in Tokyo. The club was called Ageha. The club could hold 5,000 people and was an epic party destination. Sadly, it closed in 2022, but we had one of the most crazy and unsettling nights of our lives. Our group consisted of 25 guys and one Korean girl that was dating one of the guys they called Wild Bill. Wild Bill, that's me, was a party animal that put this whole thing together, always trying to outdo the last epic party with a new and better one with more people. Soo-yun was in love with Wild Bill, and she was living in Japan and going to college, and really figuring out if Japanese people did not like Koreans. The answer is yes and no. While she did have many friends that were Japanese, there were a few businesses that would refuse her service because of her nationality, even though she spoke fluent Japanese. But because of her language ability, everyone in the group was asking her to translate this and that. After an hour and a half of 25 Americans drinking Chuhais on the train, the locals were happy to see us all leave when we got to our destination. We got to Ageha and stood the massive line for Tiesto tickets with our VIP backstage passes. This was gonna be epic. The show started and it was mayhem. Lights flashing and loud music. We all started out together, but we were slowly separated due to huge waves of crowds engulfing our group. The concert wrapped up, and there were still 3 hours until the train started back up. Our massive group regrouped, and we headed to the rooftop bar with a pool in the middle of the bar. We were all having drinks, talking about the concert when one of our guys, Isaac, sees a guy punch a girl in the face from a distance. He immediately jumps up and gets in the guy's face. The guy lets go of the girl and gets in Isaac's face. There were 6 of us watching this from a distance, ready to pounce. The showdown ended with Isaac punching the guy right in the nose. When that happened, 4 big guys stood up at a nearby table and jumped on Isaac. Our group was instantly reunited, with all 25 of us coming out of everywhere to jump on these guys. We rescued Isaac and beat those guys down until they begged for us to stop. The security rounded all of us up, including the girl, and questioned us. It turns out that this girl was under duress by this group of guys. They took her passport and were holding her hostage for weeks. She couldn't escape. The thing that saved her that night was the fact that we had so many guys with us. The 4 guys that we beat were massive and would not have gone down any other way than a full swarm. I hear that girl still writes to Isaac to tell him how much she appreciates him stepping in when he saw a woman get punched at a rooftop bar. When you see something wrong, do something about it. A few of us had just gone to a baseball game in Tokyo, and were looking for some fun bar to hang out at for a little while before we caught the train back home. A friend had recommended a place in Shibuya called Fields. When we got off the train, we were all walking towards Fields when we saw a place that offered all you could drink for 3,500 yen, which was like $35. We were not big partiers, but this place was a sports bar and did have all you could drink beer and liquor for the same price 2 or 3 beers would cost with a cover charge at Fields. It made logical sense, so we walked up the stairs to the bar. We walked in and saw sports playing on multiple TVs. This was perfect. We ordered some beers and started chatting about the game we just saw. Japanese baseball is so much fun to go see. If you haven't experienced that, you're really missing out. A shot girl came around to see if we wanted any shots. We said, okay, fine, but just 1 shot. We took it, and we were feeling nice and buzzed. I wish that 1 shot was all we did that night. We were all talking when 3 women surrounded us and started talking to us. They pretty much squeezed into empty spots, since guys don't like to sit directly next to each other for some reason. They told us that they were also just at the Swallows game, and were looking for some cheap drinks before they headed back to Yokohama. We were having a great time when the shot girl came by and asked if we wanted shots. The women said yes, and basically peer pressured us into taking another one. Then another. Then another. We were all getting pretty drunk and forgot that we had come here to have 1 drink and go home. By the time I realized what was happening, I looked up and noticed all the sports games were off. The TVs were all replaced with psychedelic graphics going to the beat of EDM music. I realized I had messed up my logical plan. I was dragged onto the dance floor and began dancing with the girl I was talking to. The rest is really a blur, and I don't know what happened after that. I woke up under a table in the bar. My wallet was gone, and so were my friends. I stumbled out of the bar with the earth moving so violently under my feet I couldn't even walk. I used the wall for stability. I wandered around a while and saw 2 figures in the distance running towards me. It was my buddies, and they were in bad shape too. They took our wallets, they said. I managed to get out. Me too. So with no wallets, we had to get a wire transfer from our Western Union and cash the check at a convenience store in the morning to make it back home. I guess in hindsight, we got work pretty good. We went to an all-you-can-drink bar, and we had all we could drink. We met some women that knew we would be out of our minds, and took the easy money. Nice scam. So after that, I never went to an all-you-can-drink bar in Japan again.